It's because I have gonna I did. How can you not? Well, if you're gonna go to that place, you need me.
It's rain or shine, right?
Yeah, if it rains.
Is it?
Yeah, sure.
Pretty good.
That's what they do.
I'm going just Thursday.
It's 3:30. We'll go call this meeting to order and have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Lautner,
Present.
Commissioner Robbins,
Here.
Commissioner Wessel.
Here.
So if you'll join me in the pledge of allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Look at the agenda as submitted.
Move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
No discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None, 3-0. Public comment, is there any public comment? Come on forward.
Good afternoon, Steve Mikowski, Lake Leelanau. I'm here to just give you an update on the inflationary binge we're enjoying. There's a graph that was in the Wall Street Journal on the 14th of October. It's pointing to an overall inflation rate of 8.2% currently. And the graph goes all the way back to 1980. And inflation rate at that time was higher than it is now. And at that time, our national debt was probably 2 billion. Now our national debt is 2 trillion. Now our national debt is 30 trillion. Now, if we honestly believe that we are in a transitory phase of inflation, or that we contain the inflation that is going on right now, we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion, because what we will be facing in the next few years will be quite surprising. I'll give each of you a copy of this article. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? I see none. So we'll move forward to the minutes of October 6th.
Move to approve the minutes of October 6th.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? None. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With the minutes. Next, we have review of finance department transition option.
You know,
Yeah, go ahead.
stop the clock here. Thank you for having this meeting on short notice. And So, you know, it's an issue we've been discussing for almost 18 months now, and I think it's time we come to a final decision here. And let me just review some information. First of all, the power is off in the building, so people see it's dark, that's why. And I guess I really found out where I raked here in the building today because I came back, the light in my office is completely dark. I have no power, can't use my computer, but Jerry Coleman has full access to his equipment. The clerk's office is fully lit. Treasurer's office is fully lit. Equalization office is fully lit. So I guess that shows you where the administrator stood in terms of priorities when this building was built. So, but I'm struggling in the dark, as people said I have been for years, so it's good. But let me just, what's that?
Pay your bill.
Well, I thought so, but obviously Mr. Coleman must have some issues with me because I'm still in the dark as of 5 minutes ago. So I think I'll just go work in Jerry's office from now on. Let me start. You have some documents. Let me review, and I'll start with the one that is from me first. It's dated this, I want the stationery. And if people in the audience want a copy, we can give it afterwards. I was gonna make more copies, but I'm not sure if our copy machine is working or not. So a couple of things, and I won't read this because you have heard this before in terms of goals and benchmarks, but a couple of things I want to point out is one, in my package, I have a copy of the resolution that was passed October of 2021 that basically established finance and HR. That's why I'm go on the record. This proposal does not change that. It's in terms of still going forward with HR and finance. And the clerk, who is not here, but asked me to state that she is in agreement. This is a temporary professional development plan if it's approved by the board. This is not an effort to transfer the finance department back to the clerk. And the clerk asked me to state that she's in agreement. This, if it's approved, will be a temporary plan that will be reviewed in March of 2023. So I said I would make that record, put that on the record. Also, there's been some confusion in the media and also by some people about whether our current finance director was a CPA, what he stated was. Everyone on the committee knew he was not a CPA. Never did he say he was CPA. At one of our meetings, one of the people, one of our auditors made an assumption that he was and made some comments. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to embarrass him and publicly say he's not a CPA. So I believe I stated, I will look into that. I'll check into that. But everyone who was on the committee knew he was not a CPA, nor did he ever claim that he was a CPA on his resume or during any of the interviews. He was interviewed twice, first by myself and a couple internal people, and then with the treasurer, the clerk, the planning director, our HR director, and myself. And we all knew he was not a CPA. So I just want to clarify that because that's been floating out there. But in terms of a proposal, and I'll take responsibility for this, and I probably should have done this at the beginning, we needed a professional development plan in place, and we should have had one in place from the beginning. And so I take responsibility for that, but we just have to go forward. I want to make sure that we just have to stop talking about the past and move forward. And what I'm about to outline is 4 specific goals and then specific benchmarks. And verbally, I've done this before, but it's in writing for the first time. And I want to say that when I talk about the benchmark and the goals, we met last week jointly with our chief auditor, our clerk, our finance director, and myself, and all of them are in complete agreement with the 4 goals and the benchmarks. I specifically asked them, are we missing anything? And everything we talked about fell under one of those benchmarks. And Mr. Peacock said he is willing through Raymond, and they would do that for any client. They have policies and procedures in place that he's willing to share with us as we go through this process to help define the benchmarks. So let me go with the 4 goals first that I have developed. And like I said, is fully endorsed by the clerk, the auditor, our finance director, and myself. And I know I said this before, but I want to make sure that's clear. First of all, a unified effort be made by all individuals in county government. And the key there is all individuals in the county government to ensure that the finance director and the county clerks acquire the skills to be successful in their duties and responsibilities. We all want them to be successful. And they're good people, they're working hard, they do need training, but I'm optimistic they with the right training, will have the ability to be successful in their job. So that's goal number one. Goal number two. And we're all in agreement that the county of Leelanau will receive a clean audit for 2022 budget year. We're all in agreement that has to be one of our goals. And I think everybody on the board would agree with that. Number three is that a professional plan with measurable benchmarks be approved and implemented prior to a transition to a new county administrator. You are meeting tomorrow morning to potentially vote on a new administrator. And it really would not be fair to him or her to come on and take on this controversy that's been festering for the last 18 months. And if we all can agree on a plan and go forward, I think it'd be a much smoother transition. It'd be very difficult for someone to come in the middle of this and have this going on without them having all the background and so forth. So hopefully we can come up with a plan, agree upon it, move forward before the new administrator come in. And there'll be at least 2 new commissioners coming on in January. And therefore, goal number 4 is resolve all related issues, controversies, and challenges related to the creation of the finance director position prior to the 23-24 Board of Commissioners assuming their duties. I think it'd be difficult for new commissioners. Mr. Robbins, you're brand new and you know full well it takes a long time to kind of get in the groove. And I think every commissioner will tell you the same thing, that it's a learning curve. And so hopefully we can get this off the table, come forward with a plan prior to January of this year. All right, so those are our 4 goals. Benchmarks, and I've developed 8 benchmarks, which I will repeat once again, have the full support of the clerk, the finance director, and our chief accountant. Benchmark number 1, the new finance director and accounting staff will be provided training and oversight on a weekly basis in their detailed duties and responsibilities, with the focus being on payroll and financial internal controls. Number 2, the development of a flow chart that clearly provides an understanding of the financial role and responsibility of the finance director, the treasurer, clerk, and the human resource director. That's one of the challenges. And we knew this was going to happen. If you look at my notes here, when I first met with Mr. Peacock, and I also consulted with the Grand Traverse County Finance Director, Mr. Bott, who are both very well respected. They all told me when we first started even posting job, expect about a year or 18 months to full transition. And that's under the best of circumstances. When you take an organization, make a major change, it takes a while to implement everything. But I think it'd be really helpful to have a flow chart with a clear understanding of who does what. So take every issue. Let's just use insurance coverage. Who's responsible for what? So there's no misunderstanding or confusion on who has what duties and responsibilities. And once again, that's between the finance director, treasurer, clerk, and the human resource director. Number 3, a complete review of the county financial manual, policies, and procedures, and recommend detailed revisions, updates if required. And that's where Raymond is willing to provide their assistance. They have policies, procedures in place that are used statewide and probably nationwide, and compare those to ours to see if they need to be updated. And we should be doing this under any circumstances. As you remember, a couple years ago, we reviewed all our policies and updated them. So this will focus mostly on the financial issues, but also to look at all the policies, procedures, and see if we're doing it correctly, or there may be a better way to do it. And like I said, Mr. Peacock and Raymond Firm are willing to provide assistance with that and provide written documents that they use. All right. Monthly updates to the county board on financial issues and the staff's progress with professional development goals. And, you know, I would recommend we put this on the budget, or I mean, on the agenda every month, and give an update so everyone has the same info. One of the things that's happening now is different people are getting different parts of the puzzle. And when that happens, there's rumors, disinformation, and so forth. So public update every month on update on these benchmarks. Number 5, weekly meetings between the board chairman, the administrator, and the finance director and the clerk to assess the progress of the training program and any related issues. Number 6, the finance director will consult with the lead auditor and local county finance directors in neighboring counties on a monthly basis or as required to seek their advice and input on finance-related issues and questions. We're not the only county that has a finance director. I know of 3 others in northern Michigan. I have verbally talked to all of the finance directors. They're willing to help out. And I think it really helps just have someone you can throw ideas off, because really the issues are pretty much the same in each county, because they all have to comply with state auditing regulations. And so they may have different systems in place, but the end result's the same. And I know in my former jobs, it was always helpful to reach out to my peers to get their input. If they have a question, they can call and hopefully get some advice. All right, number 7, and we kind of started this process, and thank you, the board, for approving it. The payroll accounting records will be reviewed from May through October 2022 to provide assurances for proper accounting and payroll procedures, and other known and any known deficiencies will be corrected. I think we talked about this prior, and we already have started that with that. We are reviewing the past payrolls just to make sure there aren't any errors. If they are, let's correct them before the audit starts. And then the other one that we already have started, and you have approved the purchase last week, number 8. The first part is purchase 6 additional user license for the Harris software system, which you graciously approved. And I think we're going to have them by the end of this week, where more employees can log in the Harris system. But also part of that, let's look at a long-term basis and see if we need any additional software updates or maybe different software, and look at that through 2023 and see if we need to make some long-term adjustments. We haven't looked at our software system in quite a few years, and we've been talking about it. Obviously, to try to do this transition and do software would be overwhelming, but let's look at it. And the 6 licenses that you provided last week will be very helpful. Like I said, I signed off on those, and if things go well, we should have them, I'm sure by Friday, activated. So it's not something that we have to have shipped to us and load. It's done through the Harris system. So that's good. And then all this will be reviewed by March of 2023 by the commissioners to see if they want to go forward, whether they think it's time to transfer it back to the new administrator or keep it on the clerk on a month-to-month basis until everyone feels comfortable that these standards and benchmarks are being met. And the rest of it you can read in my email, give some background information and so forth. But and these are basically the same benchmarks that I presented, I think, at last month's board meeting to you and the goals. But like I said, the key is there's agreement between the clerk, our lead auditor, and our finance director that these are benchmarks that are tangible and cover the full spectrum of what needs to be done. And hopefully, I think everyone would agree with the goals that we want everyone to be successful here and working together. Before I go on, is there any question on these?
Number 5, you got the word clerk. Does that mean you've already made a decision?
No.
It should be trainer.
It could be.
Should be trainer, so until we decide as a board.
All right. Any other questions? And then just yesterday, Mr. West and I received a proposal from Mr. Gallagher. And I don't know if Mr. Gallagher's on or not. He's, I believe, at a conference, but he was going to try to look. John, are you on?
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you. We can't see you, so I didn't know if you were on. And so Mr. Gallagher has put together a proposal that I think kind of coincides with my goals here in terms of training. But before he goes on, yes, I made the assumption this would be the clerk's office. But I also asked the clerk if she's willing to accept this under what terms and conditions. And I asked her to put her in writing. She have chosen not to be here, but she did put her conditions in writing that you have. And I certainly don't want to speak in her behalf, but I did say if she chose not to be here, I don't want to speak on her behalf. So if she was here, I'd have her present it. And I want to be clear, this is from the clerk, but she's not here. So I'll briefly review her conditions. And that is that she is willing to take on the training under the conditions, and I'll just summarize, that the finance director and the accounting staff report to her on a temporary basis, and that she would have supervision authority and the ability to do discipline up to this point, where if there was a decision there, we had to make a personnel change, that would be up to the county administrator. She would not have the authority to terminate any employee. That's one of her things. Number two, her request was the Leelanau County will pay for any legal fees for the county clerk and her office if there are any allegations made against her. She's requesting a $250 stipend on a weekly basis. And that will be reduced to $125 a week once the chart of accounts is completed. A $250 a week stipend to the chief deputy clerk during this training period. And she's requesting a weekly meeting with the chairman of the board and the administrator. And then she reserves the right to sever this agreement at any time. So that's her conditions if she was to implement the supervision and work on the benchmarks outline. And then Mr. Gallagher has put together a proposal that Mr. Wessel and I just got at the very end of the day yesterday. And John, do you want to review it briefly?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for
And
the
the board does have
opportunity.
a copy of it, John, just so you know.
All right, very good. No, I wanted to just present an opportunity for the board to consider an alternative. My proposal is fundamentally different with a systematic approach to involve the payroll and finance or the director and the accounts payable clerk in the decision-making and in the training. So identifying in workshops how to approach where their weaknesses are and develop a plan to review that. I've kind of laid it out in my proposal. This is a draft. The biggest point that makes a distinction between the clerk and mine is that I am not looking for advisory or supervision role. Just want to collaborate with the finance department, the clerk, and my office to develop this training. I guess open it really for questions.
John, they have just received this a few minutes ago, so they have not had a chance to review it, just so you know that. I was going to email it, but our computers are down, so.
That's quite right.
I don't know if you know, John, we lost power here in the building.
I heard. It's snowing down here in Cadillac.
So my only comment about this proposal is it actually, I think, coincides with the benchmarks that I put forward. And in a perfect world, it'd be great if the clerk and treasurer would work together and provide training. I don't think that's possible, but if you look at the end result, and I think, John, you would agree that you want our current finance director and our accounting staff to be successful.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, like I said, we just received
While
this.
maintaining their autonomy under the administrator.
Now, obviously, tomorrow morning, you're going to meet and you may pick a new administrator tomorrow. And this will be a major responsibility for that new person when they come on board. So once again, I'm hoping we can come up with a solution, and whatever decision the board makes, that everyone agrees to abide by it and go forward, because this constant turmoil has been very difficult on the staff. It's been difficult on all the employees. It hasn't been fun for Mr. Gallagher, Mrs. Craker, or myself, or the current staffing. And I think we just need to go forward and make a decision and come up with a plan and move on.
So I want to, because we're just now reading
Yeah.
these, so I just want to make sure I fully understand. So you've got in your document, the benchmarks that Raymond Robson has helped the procedures.
I developed them myself. They were endorsed by the clerk, the finance director, and by the clerk, and by
By Steve Peacock.
Steve Peacock,
Okay,
yes.
so he's on board to help.
Yes, we had a joint meeting all in one room. I proposed these and they all endorsed them.
So, and I'm almost through Gallagher proposal, but it looks like it's, I think if I get the gist of it, John, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like it does the same.
Yes, ma'am.
Concentrates on training, leaves the supervision itself under the administrator. And I don't see what it would cost your office in time or dollars to do it.
We're anticipating that we'll be able to work within each department's given hours. So we're hoping to fit it in within their normal working hours.
When John informed me that he was considering a proposal, I gave him yesterday my goals and benchmarks. And John, is it fair to assume that you agree with my goals and benchmarks?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So there's agreement on that part. It's how do we implement them is the question here. And I realize you just got the one from Mr. Gallagher, so it's hard for you to really make a judgment. We are, as you know, we're having a special meeting tomorrow. This is on the agenda along with the potential selection of a new administrator. So one option is you may want to just have time today to think about this. You have the proposal. You have my overview in terms of goals and benchmarks. You have the clerk's requirements if she was to take this on in writing, so you have that. And then you have Mr. Gallagher's proposal. That in some respects, I think, has the same goals and objectives. It's just a different method.
But one is, if you do the math here, one's gonna cost us a minimum of $13,000.
Yeah, I believe, and help me out, Mr. Gallagher, I don't want to speak on your behalf, and I want to make sure I don't speak on the clerk's behalf, but I believe in your proposal, you're not asking for stipend or additional staffing, correct?
That's correct.
You say 13,000?
Well, if you go a half a year, Mark, I'm going to March. It's like
Oh, I see.
almost
So
6
it'd be-
months. Yeah, if this went for a year, it'd be $26,000.
Okay. Oh, yeah, thank you. All right, Todd?
Well, I did have the conversation with John on Friday, and I talked to the clerk, and I have read Chet's benchmarks. And clearly, I support the benchmarks, and clearly, we can't do it unless we're all working together. And I appreciate the treasurer's offer, but we also need the clerk involvement. It's got to be everybody. And I think we have a package here that puts that all together. And I know there will be some disagreement with details, but we cannot solve this problem unless we're all on the same page and we're all working together and we all have a piece of the responsibility to make it work. I know once we get this resolved, whatever decisions we make, administrator told me he plans to meet with staff and make sure that everybody knows that it's everybody's responsibility to make this happen. And I think we have a possibility here on this paper to make that happen. Thank you.
I agree, it's gonna take a team effort, but what I would like to see is, this does fall underneath the administrator's job duties, is the finance director. And to make this work, we need one chef in the kitchen, and that's gonna be the county administrator. What I would like to see is the clerk and the treasurer and the finance, everybody works together, but instead of having so many too many chefs in the kitchen, we have one, and that's the administrator, and if there's a problem, the treasurer and the clerk reports to you and then talks to Jared, instead of, there's just, poor guy is, running in circles because he has too many bosses. And that's been the problem. I feel sorry. I'd like to have Jared step up and tell us what he needs from us. I'd like to hear it for the first time. I mean, we're hearing from everybody else what he needs, but I'd like to hear from him what he needs to succeed.
Well, this.
I would have to echo
The full
that.
board. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'd echo Commissioner Robbins that I would need, full support of finance director and the clerk to make that happen.
He would need the full support of the finance director and the clerk
Right.
for his plan. I believe that you said, John, right?
Correct.
Okay, well, this is on the agenda for tomorrow. I'm assuming the clerk will be here tomorrow. John, will you be here tomorrow or are you still at your meeting?
I'll be back.
And we can bring in Jared. Just have an honest discussion to go forward. If you look at the training, if the clerk and the treasurer could work together, it'd be great. Because we all agree on what needs to take place. We all know what the benchmarks are. We all know what the goals are. We're all saying that we agree. No one has disagreed with the goals and benchmarks. It's how do we accomplish them?
And maybe it's time we make history. It's time in the history of this county, the clerk and treasurer start working together.
In my proposal, I feel that we have that opportunity with the treasurer's office working with the payroll clerk and the AP clerk. And in my proposal, I have the clerk's office working directly with the finance director on management reports and annual reporting.
Okay, and does that fall in with requirements of the audit, John?
Yes,
What are you thinking? Okay, so tell us about your staff, John.
on my staff, I've got 3 wonderful staff. My chief is Sarah Lautner, got a bachelor's in accounting. She also has governmental experience. Natalie Winter, bachelor's in accounting. She has governmental experience. Johanna Novak, she's got probably more years of experience in accounting than everybody in my office combined. And they're willing to implement in their day the review that's necessary and the feedback that's necessary to see this transition.
So in my understanding, so Ty, what you're saying, are you talking about perhaps a hybrid of both proposals to present tomorrow? Or are you saying, because you said we all must work together, I would love to see that, I really would. John's includes working with the clerk.
Yeah, I didn't see John's inconsistent with the clerks. I thought we need both pieces of it. And certainly without the Treasury Department being a big part of it and John's and his staff's expertise, it won't work. Likewise, if we don't have the clerk and the clerk staff, it won't work. So I think we put the 3 together, staple them, and we have a proposal for board action.
Well, I think Commissioner Robbins brings a good point. I think since all 7 commissioners are going to be here tomorrow, this is on the agenda. It'd be appropriate to have the treasurer, the clerk, and our finance director here express their views. Like I said, I feel uncomfortable speaking on behalf of the clerk. I certainly want to speak on behalf of John, and that's why I asked John to zoom in. I guess the agreement is, everyone's agreement with a professional development plan. We have a plan that I think everyone can support. It's how do we implement it, who's responsible, supervision, and are there any stipends? That's what it comes down to.
And so that's where I was going with my question. So to take our, and perhaps we are, I'm kind of asking you all where you think you want to go on it, but certain pieces would be handled by certain persons. So, because I think that Rick brings up a very good point that we can't have too many chefs stirring the pot. So we need to know clearly who is going to train, who, which department, if it's in the procedures, who will be responsible for those? Ultimately, I agree, we have, our administrator has to be the one that steps up and supervises and just make sure that the pieces are all covered. And I do want to hear from Jared. If you want to wait till tomorrow to hear from Jared, that's fine too. I don't know if Jared's even seen the proposals yet.
He has seen mine.
Okay.
I've shared, I shared mine with Jared and Michelle prior to coming to the board. John has seen it, and I told Michelle yesterday that there may be a proposal from Mr. Gallagher too. So we're trying to be as open as possible. The challenge is, I, administrator, have no authority over the treasurer or over the clerk. So they need to buy into it and exactly say, because nor do you actually,
Right.
know.
But we do with Jared.
Yes, but I'm saying in terms of them working together in a plan, it'd be great if they could, because really, when you look at what John is saying and what the clerk said she would abide by these benchmarks, they're saying the same thing. But can they work together on this plan is a big question, and where there'll be any additional compensation for that activities. That I can't control as an administrator. So I think you need a firm discussion with them on what they're willing to do and not willing to do.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I think I understand we can't have too many chefs in the kitchen. I also think everybody's got a piece of solving the problem. But I clearly, in my mind, the clerk and the deputy clerk are key to that training. And they're the ones that have got us through the audits in the past several years. And I'm not going to be satisfied with a plan that doesn't include the clerk's office and the clerk having major responsibility for their staff and training. That's got to happen.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't include it. I'm not gonna buy into that we give immunity to the clerk and her staff, that we're gonna supply legal with that. We might just do it to everybody in the county. I mean, and then why give them $250 a week more?
But we have the responsibility of giving legal counsel for any staff.
Any staff, but she's, the way she has it worded here.
I think that's from some experience you have.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just, I think it's time everybody grows up in this building and works together. I mean, we don't have to, pay. I mean, we got the staff here that can do it. But everybody's just gotta start getting along and make this work.
I don't disagree. And I think you're absolutely right. We do provide legal. I don't really see that as an issue unless it's something that is outside of what we generally cover. I'd be interested to know what that might be. I can't approve us paying stipends. We've been down that road before, and that's just not gonna fly in this courthouse. I do like the idea, as you said, if we're all want to see these employees be successful, then we do need to all step up and work together. And I appreciate the proposals. I think there's even perhaps a third, and that is, and as I said, Jared, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you do want to speak to any of this today, just come forward. But our auditor has laid out the procedures. We have the goals, benchmarks, we have procedures. I think we've come a long ways, and I'm confident that we're going to get there. So it's just a matter of how. So there's a third, do we just, work solely with our auditor? I think that would be more cumbersome, because I think there's a lot of expertise in this county. Clearly, we have a lot of education in the field and experience in the departments, doing payroll, et cetera. So I think we've got it. If it can be pieced together, as you say, I guess I would need to see that hybrid.
Yeah, and the challenge of Mr. Peacock wants to make this very clear. He is willing to provide general guidance, but he cannot oversee, supervise, or review documents because that's a conflict with his role as auditor.
Exactly.
So the documents he's willing to provide are documents Raymond would provide to any unit of government that requests it.
But he
but-
has been clearly giving guidance all along. That's-
He can give guidance, but he's got to be careful there. So that's why I don't want to speak on his behalf, but he's got to be careful there. He cannot provide oversight and specific training on a regular basis. Can they do a seminar for employees? Absolutely. But they cannot on a regular basis be oversight or reviewing the work done by the finance department, because that'd be a conflict. Well, I mean, we could hire them, but they have to give up their role as auditors. They can't do both.
Right. Right. I do understand that. So, if you want to move anything forward to tomorrow or sleep on it tonight, yeah, oh, sure, come forward, Jared.
Yeah, so like Chet said, I haven't really seen all the proposals and everything, but of course, I like the idea of us all being able to work together for this. I know, the staff that would be training the accountant clerks now, we're doing those jobs, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Jen and I can sit down and go through what I would be doing, so I think having us all involved is a very good idea for this moving forward. And then if we're having meetings and stuff, I think we all should be included in those things. When this first kind of came up, it was a training plan instead of like a transition plan. And I think we should stick to that.
Training plan.
Yes.
Yeah, and even the clerk, once again, want to make it clear because she's not here. She does not view this as a long-term goal for us to have the finance department report back to the clerk's office. So it is a training, I'm calling it professional development plan. It's same thing. But you did request that I did mention that, and I think I did, but my plan is to have a review in March. And that time the board can make a decision whether it's successful or not, or whether it needs more training, more background.
Yeah, and all of it can just be training, I figured. I mean, the way we have it set up right now, we'd all kind of be under one person, and that makes a lot of sense too.
But contrary to some rumors, this is not a plan to revert back or to void out the resolution the board passed in October of 2021, which created these two positions.
I don't know if we need to have a recommendation. We have 6 commissioners here. Deb Rushton is the only one that doesn't have it. Maybe Jeff could send the materials to Deb as we have this discussion with everybody tomorrow, so that everybody gets to be in.
I may have to go down to Jerry Coleman's office to do it, but I'll be glad to go in the basement and do it. But really, it is a special meeting tomorrow, and this is on the agenda. So whether you move forward or not, it's on the agenda. So really, it's kind of a moot point. So I think you have the documents, you can review it. I will pass this out to anyone who wants them, including the commissioners. And if there's power, I'll just email all 3 documents to all 7 commissioners. And tomorrow I'll invite Michelle and John and Jared to come. And I think we just need to have an honest dialogue. I think everyone's saying the same thing. I mean, everyone seems to be saying, we want Jared and the staff to be successful. Everyone's agreeing with the goals. Everyone's agreeing with the benchmarks. There's no disagreement there. It's how do we go forward and implement them? That's the key. And that's the most critical part of this puzzle. And yes, it's been stressful for Jared. I'm sure, you know, this is, I filled him in a little bit what's going on before we started, but I also
Little
did
bit.
not, we did not anticipate the two accounting clerks moving to treasurer's office, and they're good professional opportunities for them. So I congratulate them. And so, I mean, it's good for them. They should be able, they have the right to choose where they wish to work and,
So on record, they transferred and did not quit.
correct. Yeah, I want to clarify that. The treasurer's office had 2 vacancies. The jobs are posted. There was an opening for a chief deputy clerk, which was an advancement for Sarah Lautner. And so she applied. And she was awarded the job. And then there was an opening due to Margaret going to the Suns Bay Public Schools. She was a deputy clerk, PRE auditor, but her degree actually was in culinary arts. So she had a chance to go back home with Suns Bay and be a chef. So it's a great opportunity for her. And so that left an opening for treasurer, deputy treasurer / PRE, and Johanna Novak applied and got the job. And she did agree to stay for a couple weeks extra beyond the posting with the agreement of John to help a little bit with the transition. But obviously, when we started this, I certainly was not expecting the 2 of them to transfer over to the treasurer's office. So I'm happy for them. And by all accounts, they're doing a good job, but it did create more stress and more work having hired 2 brand new people in this market. You know, and why I'm confident the 2 people can learn the skills. They both had accounting background, but private accounting is completely different than government accounting, and anyone coming in, even someone with a degree.
And learning the systems and learning everything all falls into that training. You can know as much accounting as you want, but if you get put in front of a computer and don't know how to do anything, and well, policies, how things are done, how to enter in things, all of that, then it doesn't really matter.
So I'm optimistic we can come up with a solution.
Before you transferred, that's what they were doing.
They were 2 accounting staff people.
So they, yeah, all right, so there's that experience there. Okay. All right.
So I will attempt to email all these documents to all the commissioners for tomorrow's discussion.
But we do have the treasurer's staff here, and
Oh.
I do know that they did agree, and part of the conversation with John last week. So thank you very much.
All right, is there anything more we have on the agenda? Other issues? Do we have anything else? Today? Same discussion items. Further, any other comments? Public comment.
You can get out of here.
Mike?
Yeah, sure. Also, if anyone in the audience would like copies of this, I'll be glad to pass them out. I think our copy machines will.
Sheriff Mike Barkovich, I just wanted to let you know that the reason we're here, since midnight last night, we have had at least 106 calls. We're monitoring them for police, fire, EMS, and that's due to this storm. It's unbelievable. I was down in Leland earlier, working with boats and this and that. There's power lines down everywhere. I would think it highly appropriate maybe that the board send some kind of resolution or something to the fire chiefs. There's a meeting tomorrow, even an email from one of you thanking them. They have been out with chainsaws. They have insulated clothes, gloves. They're soaking wet. They're tired. You know, and this is just since midnight. There were calls before that, but it's incredible. And, you know, we have deputies out doing the same thing, but we, as of right now, the 3 of us have been kind of insulated with meetings and things over there today. half of our deputies are at Camp Grayling right now. Yesterday was EVO, emergency vehicle operation, high-speed driving on tracks over there that we can't do here. And today they're out in the rain on firearms training with their rifles and shotguns, so, or rifles and pistols. But the bottom line is our other half goes tomorrow. So why I'm saying this is we're depleted, they're depleted. But what these fire guys are doing, these EMS and paramedics and fire chiefs themselves have been out there. They really probably could use a little pat in the back from somebody from the board or something here, because it's over the top out there. You wouldn't know it, but a lot of this county doesn't have power. But what you don't realize, when you can't charge your phone or you can't watch your TV show, they're out there in the pouring rain and wind, they're under trees, they're half broken, they're stopping cars, people are mad because they can't get to work or doctor's appointments. So I didn't want to belabor that, but I think that maybe a little pat on the back from you all to the fire chiefs would be good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Brenda?
Let's add the road commission to that.
Absolutely.
By 2 o'clock, they were on my road at least 6 times.
Might add dispatch too. They've been handling all these calls and stress people, so a whole bunch of, thank you.
All
Thank
first
you.
responders.
And
Steve,
thank you, Beth.
And sure,
yeah,
for you.
lineman. To Steve,
Good afternoon again. Many years ago, about 35, when Leelanau Township and the county began developing their own unique sewer system, with the township spending $250,000 on a no-bid basis of designing the sewer, with the county along for the ride and its Board of Public Works. We had a lawyer friend, and we had a question for them because things were going badly for the people who were forced to be into a special assessment district without any notice. I asked the lawyer friend, why do people do these things? Why do public officials do these things? And he said, Steve, good people do bad things. We human beings are just built that way. So good people do bad things. Good people who do bad things apologize. We sent an email to all you commissioners on the weekend. There's one important element missing to this whole process, which would, I believe, help us along the way. The apology to the clerk and to the people, taxpayers. One of the things that was raised today was this issue has been festering. It's been festering here since May 21. It was an unnecessary fester. Absolutely unnecessary. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, hired people, and done all these things. If we could have just stepped back within the first 2 weeks this began and said to ourselves, what are we doing? But we chose not to. Some commissioners objected, but others did not. Others went for the ride. Everybody in the county building seemed to have gone for the ride. So I'm asking again that this county commissioners and everybody involved in this process that brought this festering thing on the table apologize to the clerk and the people. Thank you.
is there any other public comments?
Kathy Hardisfeld. Just hearing the discussion today, I think it might not be a bad idea to look into an AG opinion, as statute clearly defines and delineates the duties and responsibilities between clerk's officers and treasurer's offices. And I know that when I came to the courthouse and I still held my elected position as treasurer of Suttons Bay Township, we did obtain an AG opinion if I could work in a particular office in this building, because there could be a conflict of interest. So I think as you deliberate and make a decision, it wouldn't be a bad idea to get an AG opinion about whatever you decide to do, especially with regard to the hybrid concept. Thank you.
I see no other hands. Okay, Mr. Chair.